Hi, this is Glenn from Human37. Wanted to make a short video about the compatibility, or at least how GTM and segment can play together, right? Usually how people think of segment is that you would have a source, let's call it the analytics 2.0 SDK, which basically pushes data into segment, and then segment forwards it into a destination, right? So that's kind of how the flow works. Now, Segment has two ways of working. One is cloud mode, which is basically kind of some server-side modus where actually the payload is taken onto the Segment systems and servers, and then where it is translated into the right payload for the destination to work. There's another alternative, which is device mode, which basically works in a way where, and this is the case if I'm not mistaken for some of the advertising tags, the analytics SDK is actually loaded. Segment looks up if there is a device mode destination, and actually that destination will be loaded into the browser, right? Um, I talked about that we're going to explore GTM incompatibility with Segment. Most people are using either this or either this for the simple reason that they want to keep their code light. They want one SDK to rule them all, right? And they want everything to be on the same source of truth. Sometimes what we see is that there are challenges here. I'm going to put this in orange or maybe a bit red, where some of the destinations are not as configurable as you would like to have when you natively implement it as a snippet, rather than using the segment device mode destination, which loads that snippet for you, right? I'm going to call it lack of config. Maybe the wording is a bit too strong, but it gives you an idea, right? So what do we do in that case? One of the approaches that we actually like is in those cases where you want extra configurability and the destination or the device mode destination hasn't been updated, or you need to do some custom tweaks, which the UI of Segment doesn't necessarily allow you to do. What we like to do is actually to use GTM. What happens in this case, the Analytics SDK will load. Segment will look at the destinations that should be fed or should be receiving data. It will find GTM, and actually what it will do is it will load GTM through that Analytics 2.0 SDK. I talked about code being light, but another element is maintenance, right? Why? Because if you have different tags, you need to maintain different snippets of code, right? So what's going on here, maybe the code isn't as light because we're actually loading GTM as well. I'll put that in orange, right? But for a number of destinations where you actually need that flexibility, this is actually a very good solution. For the simple reason that your maintenance actually remains the same. Because under the hood, what is going on? The Analytics Segment SDK will receive track calls, will receive or will instrument track calls, identify calls, page calls. And what it will do is it will actually use that SDK to populate the data layer. And everybody knows that the data layer is then used by GTM in order to populate tags, fire tags, etc., etc., etc. So this means that for these two objects, we actually have one code base to maintain, which is essentially the Analytics 2.2 SDK, which is really nice, which allows you to build in extra flexibility where sometimes segments, device mode destinations aren't up to speed yet, don't allow you the flexibility that you would need. And in that case, you can obviously use as much as you want and as you can the cloud mode destinations to offload all of the burden, all of the code from your front end. If Segment allows you to use the device mode destinations and you have enough flexibility to use these. But if there's like a marginal amount of tags, let's say like there's a specific vendor or a third party or an affiliate tag that you want to maintain and you're not able to do it through a Segment destination, then GTM is absolutely a good way going forward. I'll actually give you a quick show of how it works. So what I have here in my sources, so I have a local host that's being spun up. This is Glenn localhost. And you can see here as part of my destinations, what I have is where is it? Where is it? I have a GTM, right? So basically what I'm doing is I'm just populating this GTM from Segment, right? So this is a container, ppn, which should be this container, right? And I'm going to show you what preview looks like. Yes, you can spin up my local host. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to populate the data layer, but actually through the segment SDK, right? So what's happening now is the segment SDK is loading. It's looking at the destination it's supposed to load. It sees GTM. So GTM is actually loaded on this page. You can see that because my preview is actually live, right? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a data layer, sorry, not a data layer. I'm going to do analytics.track, and I'm going to say, hello, this is a test. Very bad example, by the way, but whatever. It's for the purpose of testing. I'm actually not going to add properties. I'm just going to push an event as is. What we see here is that analytics.track is doing what it's supposed to do. I'm quickly going to check in my local host to see if we're receiving that test event. We should be at least. My debugger. Hello, this is a test, right? This is my test event. But actually what we're going to see in my debugger is that actually my data layer is being populated as well. So if we go back to our diagram, this is actually a good middle ground or workaround, if you will, to make sure that all of these destinations that you want extra configurability that aren't part of the device mode selection of segments destinations, or where you basically need some extra leeway in order to tweak. This is a good middle ground or a halfway solution, if you will, to quickly spin those up or spun those up without actually increasing too much code. Your code will be a bit heavier because you're using GTM, right? But then again, it's only GTM and your additional tag. So I think this is still fairly valid. Keep your code as light as possible while getting all the functionality you need, which otherwise you can't, and ensuring that maintenance is actually very low. So it means that we're still consuming from the same source of truth, but the configurability on when do we fire, how do we populate additional things is completely under your control. Hope this was helpful. Thank you.